Tonight on News 5 Live, the 2019-2020 school year comes to a premature end as the Ministry of Education announces that all students should stay at home for the remainder of the final term amid the COVID-19 crisis. No new COVID-19 cases in 5 days. Police investigate the death of Ulysses Roca, the fashion designer, was found dead inside his house. And 138 persons were arrested for breaching the curfew over the weekend. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
Our frontline teams
evening. Welcome to News 5 Live from Monday, April 20th. I am Marlene Cuellar. Under normal circumstances, high schools would close in May and primary schools in June for the summer break. But COVID-19 has disrupted every facet of life. The Ministry of Education today announced via a webcast a series of measures that will apply for the rest of the school year. Now, classes were initially suspended in March and scheduled to reopen today, but students and parents can expect that home-based learning is likely to continue. Here's News 5's Isani Caetano with this report.
The 2019-2020 school year is at a premature end, as students and teachers at all levels of academia are asked to sit out the final semester, while Belize remains in the throes of the coronavirus emergency. Classrooms across the country were set to reopen today. Instead, the Ministry of Education made the announcement via a televised press conference.
Probably the most burning question is, when will schools reopen? And on this issue, I advise that guidance for the reopening of schools will come from the National Oversight Committee based on the advice of health authorities. Under the circumstances, let me point out that the reopening of schools before the end of the current school year is not guaranteed. Therefore, distance and home-based learning are expected to continue to varying degrees at different levels of education.
At present, we remain in a national state of emergency, which expires on May 2nd. Schools have been out since March 20th in anticipation of the first COVID-19 case. The number of confirmed cases has stalled at 18. However, government, through its various response agencies, will determine when schools can reopen.
As we inch our way further and further along the calendar year and toward this final phase of our school's calendar year, another pressing question at this time is, what is the plan for promotion and graduation of students? For preschool students, the ministry's recommendation is as such. Those first-year preschool students, that is those children who are 3 years old, should be promoted to the 4-year-old year. And those students who are 4 years old, we are recommending should receive their preschool certificates and transition into primary school. For primary school students, and in accordance with Education Rule 128.2, all students from Infant 1 to Standard 5 are expected to be promoted, and schools are asked to provide special assistance for those students who require such during the upcoming school year.
Standard 6 students who satisfy the requirements for graduation will be allowed to participate in commencement exercises. Promotions at the secondary level, for all intents and purposes, are also inevitable.
As it relates to secondary school students, our schools are encouraged to provide all first to third form students with sufficient opportunities to advance to the next level of education and to provide, where it is necessary, remedial support on the reopening of school. In other words, we promote these students from first to second form if they're in first form, second to third form if they're in second form, third to fourth form if they're in third form. And once they get into that new class, the remedial work of bringing them up to speed ought to be done post-haste.
As for national and regional examinations, including the Belize Junior Achievement Test, the primary school examinations, and the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, those two have been waived this school year.
The Belize Junior Achievement Test, the BJAT, will not be administered this academic year, but instead this exam will be used as a diagnostic tool for schools to use by administering it at the start of Primary Standard 4. The primary school exam, the PSE, will not be administered this academic year. The already printed examination scripts instead will be given to high schools and will be required for use in assessing the competence of their first form students so that targeted academic support can be provided to those who need it. at the secondary and tertiary levels, Belize cannot participate in the 2020 sitting of Caribbean Examination Council CXC Cape exams, or CSEC and Cape exams, sorry, as presently scheduled.
To that end, the Ministry of Education is in the process of dialoguing with stakeholders to agree on a possible date when those secondary and tertiary papers can be sat. Reporting for News 5, I am Asani Cayetano.
We'll have more from the Ministry of Education press conference later in the newscast. The last confirmed cases of COVID-19 virus were last week Monday, and it is now 7 days since the Ministry of Health has not reported any other case relating either to community spread or imported cases. Even as no new cases are confirmed, there are 66 cases still under investigation, so we're not yet out of the woods. Since the start of the outbreak, there have been 18 confirmed cases and 2 deaths. The latest information from Ministry of Health shows that 772 tests have been done, of which 18 are positive. In the latest infographic, it shows that 9 of the positive cases are males and the remaining 9 are women. If this trend continues, the government may be looking at changes in the state of emergency that expires at the end of this month. A number of countries opt for a gradual easing of restrictions. Here, the government will have to go to the National Assembly if it intends to make changes to the state of emergency. Ulysses Roca, a 25-year-old fashion designer, was found dead inside his house in Willows Bank in the Belize district on Sunday. Roca's death is under investigation because of the circumstances. Roca was a homosexual and an HIV patient, 2 issues that made him a target for threats and bullying. Just before his death, he posted on social media that he had suffered a beating at the hands of the police when he was picked up for violating curfew regulations. The allegations against the police for abuse are well known to Roca's family. So Roca's family appealed for a post-mortem to be conducted to determine his cause of death. Here is News 5's Dwayne Moody with this report.
I don't get the fair treatment that I deserve. I didn't get a phone call. I was locked up from Saturday. I didn't get phone calls. I didn't get anything. They wanted me to pay for my property. Like, really? You're locking me up for a curfew breach and you want me to pay for my property? What's going on? Why am I being called princess? Why am I being treated like this? Like, that's a question that I'm asking to the police officers.
That is one of several emotional videos shared by Ulysses Roca in the days ahead of his death in Willows Bank, Belize district. The 25-year-old was distressed and expressed his frustrations over being bullied and then physically assaulted by an officer. His swollen jaw is where the officer, who he identifies at the end of the video, struck him. That swelling got worse as the days went by.
He was with a police officer that he said was Mr. Shane Pope, and he had told my sister that with the beating that he already received at the station in Belize, on top of that, the officer hit him in the face with a machete. And the Tuesday, which was the 7th, we got messages from 2 persons in London that said Ulysses needed help, and Ulysses went to their houses and was telling them that the police beat him and burned him with cigarettes. Because of sexuality, I feel like he am always a target. Always a target. And Ulysses was not the best person. He was not. He had his ways. He had arguments with people, but nobody deserves to be treated like that.
Ulysses was first detained by police on April 5th for violating the curfew law. He was arraigned, pleaded guilty, and was fined $3,000 one day later. Commissioner of Police Chester Williams says that police had also responded to a report in Belize City in which Roca had been beaten by an unidentified individual. In one of his Facebook Live videos, Ulysses foreshadows his death and days later, on Sunday, he is found lying face up on a bed inside a room at a house in Willows Bank. He was observed with a swelling to the neck.
I saw a Facebook post where he had gone live and expressed that he was hit to the face by a police officer while in custody. He also showed his jaw to be swollen. And in that same live, he also made some allegations against some other persons whom he was saying were bullying him. Subsequent to all of this, on April 16th, police got a call of a situation on Farbach Road Extension and they responded. When police got there, Ulysses Roca was met. And he expressed to the police that he was beaten up by an individual. He was questioned as to who the person was, and he said he do not know the person. Police had offered to take him to the hospital, and he refused to go to the hospital. On Friday night, gone, he apparently was experiencing some pain and had requested his neighbors to take him to the hospital. And they had refused to take him, I guess because of the fact that it was night, and subsequent to that he went to his bed. He was last seen alive, I think, Saturday, and then yesterday his body was found. I am not going to say that his death was caused due to police beating him. I'm not going to say it was not either, because from what he said in his video, the police hit him on the jaw. I don't think a hit on the jaw will cause someone death. And subsequent to that, on the 16th, he alleged again that someone had beaten him.
The family requested a post-mortem because his siblings believe that as an HIV-positive individual, he may have died as a result of complications from the beating he received at the hands of the police.
Even though he had HIV, there's so many other things, especially the fact that he had that infection, because his face, at first, it was just a small lump right here. And eventually, everything just blew up right here. All down here, me swell up. Fat. So it's obvious that he had an infection. Like I tell you, I don't know, he went to the hospital twice and they denied him. I tell we the body made that a boom at the morgue. The body was not there. When we got there, the security told us nobody was brought there yesterday and nobody was brought there today. When they brought my brother, they had the pickup back open, the foot they hang out. Almost look for drop out of the thing. They do it. We wait almost an hour. We get there from 10, exact 10. We wait till after 11 for this doctor come. When the doctor come, my brother, he gonna witness the thing. He say they not do no postmortem. We the outside, we could have done smell here already when they open the door. He may done decompose. He said then the doctor said they don't do no postmortem, and the doctor tell him Ulysses never had no swelling. Ulysses never had no sign and no police brutality. So, and my brother said, but I see it myself. We all see it. We witness it. We have pictures, we have videos, we see everything. And he was like, I'm the expert here. I had to tell you that never caused that. But he said they never cut and open there when he made it nothing. They just tell he that.
Information to News 5 is that Ulysses died as a result of multiple organ failure.
One of the things I learned about police procedure is that the officers can always misspeak about what will happen and what will not happen. They forget that victims of violent crimes will always advocate for some kind of closure. For that particular officer who misspoke, he also is symbolic of what is problematic in our society and in the police department. That when victims of crime, whether it's a woman, whether it's a person with mental breakdown, comes to you, it requires you to show some level of humanity and address their need the best way you can. To be so insensitive and lack understanding that you will deny closure to a family member who's seeking to understand why their loved one died shows that individual has no respect for decency or the life of this person that they found in that house by himself.
According to Unibam's Executive Director Caleb Orozco, it is not the first time that the police department has demonstrated difficulty in dealing with someone with a mental health issue. Back in 2019, a mentally ill patient was murdered by another inside a police cell when officers on duty breached protocol. Most recently, the police department received a black eye when officers coerced a mentally challenged woman and a man to perform in a sexual act. Those officers have since been charged for a crime. Now this.
At the heart of the matter, he may have been denied medical care, and there were overzealous officers who expressed their homophobia through name calling like Cinderella and Princess. And in my mind, this could have been mitigated by simply recognizing that medical attention was required. There are black spots in the police department that will always give it a black eye because they're busy in promoting a culture of suppression and not making a distinction between those individuals that need a little bit more empathy in their response and a little less suppression in the way they must carry out their duties. In my mind, this is a wake-up call for the police department to do better, to strengthen their ability to deal with people who are not privileged to speak, to hear, to comprehend basic language of instruction.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Rocha was a fashion designer who suffered from cyberbullying for being a member of the LGBTI community and for being HIV positive. In a recent post on his social media page, Ulysses questioned his ill treatment by officers as well as his purpose in life. This was in response to a widely circulated video which captures Rocha being ridiculed by officers inside a police station. They referred to him as being homeless, though he defended himself while in custody. According to the family, the disrespect by the officers and others towards her brother has been happening for years, and this most recent episode made him mentally unstable.
I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I did not deserve that, and I feel like so humiliated. I feel so humiliated. Like, why? Why are you guys doing this to people? Like, there's a virus going around and you're gonna be out here abusing people and taking advantage of people? Like, what is wrong with you? Here you are and you're videoing me and you're making me look like a fool. Why? Why? You know, I'm going through a lot. I'm going through the biggest transition of my life. I lost my mom. Like, can you let me grieve her? Can you please let me do that in peace?
My brother was not homeless. He lived in Willows Bank at my mom's house, and whenever he needed anything, he comes to the city, and whatever we can do for him, we do. The way how he chooses to live his life, we can't stop that. But all I know, the video that they put out was just horrible because nobody deserves to be treated like that. Nobody deserves to be taunted and beaten and treated like an animal.
The family claims that Rocha was denied access to medical assistance due to his HIV status. saying that a post-mortem was initially refused because of that. Kayla Baruska, the executive director of the United Belize Advocacy Movement, also known as UNIBAM, says that the ordeal that Rocha endured in the days leading up to his death shows that the police department, family members, and the community where he lived could not identify or know how to assist a person who was having a mental breakdown.
The problem here is police officers, neighbors, family members, no matter who they are, don't have the tools necessary to understand what a mental breakdown looks like and to legitimately respond with some level of empathy. For me, he didn't die from complicated complications. He didn't die from multiple organ failure. He didn't die from being hit in the face. He died from a lack of empathy because not the police, not the neighbors, not family members, nobody, absolutely nobody had the tools, or in this case they were lacking in compassion, or in this case empathy, to understand this fellow needed help, that he had lost his mom 3 months ago, but that they were not helping in the mocking that they were doing on Facebook. They were not helping in addressing the legitimate case of pain. They were not helping in the indifference. And so I see this is a lesson for all of us.
Just recently, 3 cops coerced a man to have sex with a mentally challenged woman. That despicable act was recorded on cell phone by one of the rogue cops and released. The trio was charged. The investigation into the death of Ulysses Rocha also identifies breaches in policy in the police department as it relates to the use of cell phones. Commissioner of Police Williams says that police officers should not record and make mockery of people. As to the officers who participated in the Rocha video recorded inside the Raccoon Street Police Station, Chester Williams says that the Professional Standards Branch has been tapped to investigate those responsible, and they will be dealt with.
Now, there are some internal issues that need to be addressed. I have been told of a video that was recorded inside Precinct 2 police station when the young man was detained. And again, I cannot understand why will police be videoing an arrested person on their cell phone, making fun of people, and then the video end up in the public domain. I have a serious issue with that. We have a cell phone policy, and even though when that cell phone policy was signed into law for police, some members of the public had issues over it, that the commissioner is trying to control this and control that, but these are the kind of behaviors that we foresaw why we decided to implement the cell phone policy. Police officers should not be taking the cell phones to record people and make a mockery of people. Whatever lifestyle Mr. Rocha lived, that is his business. And that should be no reason for police or anyone to make fun of him or to bully him. Regardless of who he was, his lifestyle, he was a human being just like all of us, and is entitled to the same fundamental rights and freedom that all of us are entitled to, and that should be respected. And so, where that video is concerned, that police took and put on social media, I have directed Professional Standard Branch to inquire into it, and the chips will fall where they may.
Campo Williams says that the officers responsible will be charged for violation of the cell phone policy of the department, and the conduct of taking the video and distributing it is an act of prejudice of good order and discipline. Coming up, about 138 gang members have been released from Central Prison, but the city remains free of violence over the weekend. Last Thursday evening, 137 gang members were released from the Belize Central Prison. The men were sent to prison for 1 month following a series of killings and shootings over the span of 48 hours. As you'll recall, police quickly declared a state of emergency which targeted 8 crime-ridden and gang-controlled neighborhoods in Belize City. Well, those men have been released and are back in their homes. But that release came with some conditions. The gang members reportedly agreed to surrender their weapons and sign an agreement with the CYDP that if released, they will hold the peace. Upon their release, the police received an initial 27 weapons. Today, Commissioner of Police Chester Williams told the press that they have received 5 more guns since then and that the peace is being maintained since the release of the gang members.
I would hope that they keep it that way. If it is that they keep it that way, then it's good for all of us. We want to see us as a society coexisting. We cannot have people among us who display behaviors that are incompatible with ordinary human behaviors. And all we ask of the gang members is to display behaviors that is consistent with regular people. And if that happens, then there'll be no issue with us.
Number of guns that have been gotten from the gang members released from detention in prison, I thought it was like 27 or 25 you said, and you expected 5 more. Can you just provide an update on that?
I know since then we have received 2 more. We should be getting the others this week. So we continue to work on that and see what else we can do to disarm the gang members of their firearms.
But Compal, is it the expectation that each gang member would have a gun?
No. What we see in the gang world is that that not everybody have a gun. Some, when they want to go on mission, they go borrow a gun to go and do the mission. And when they're finished, they return the gun to who they borrow it from. So to say that 137 release and 27 guns no add up, I wouldn't ascribe to that, because not each of them would have a gun, no.
And you wouldn't expect that some would have a stash though? Have you got like 2 or 3 from one?
Yes, we do. We got up to 7 from one group.
But while the released gang members appear to be keeping the peace, their release from prison has put an added pressure on the Belize Police Department during the state of emergency. Commissioner Williams says, however, that while it stretches the police resources, the officers have stepped up to the challenge.
We do have to continue to monitor the gang situation. We know that while they were in prison, we didn't have much to monitor, only the few who were out. With them out now, then we have to look at the entire gang landscape with a view to see what we can do to minimize their activities. I would hope that whatever commitment they have made, that they live up to it. CYDP is working with them. As I say, I don't want it to be a police issue, because we, from police standpoint, there is no room for negotiation. If there is anything to be done, let CYDP do that. We, the police, will come down with the law when the need arises. So we have to now look at policing the state of emergency regulations, as well as looking at the normal crime situation that we'd be normally accustomed to. I would hope that that is going to change, that we'll become more accustomed now to a more peaceful city moving forward from here.
With these gang members being out and the police playing such a critical role in terms of enforcing the state of emergency, does this put any kind of pressure at all on the policing resources?
Of course it do, because we have to focus on the gang members as well, as opposed to only dealing with the state of emergencies regulations. So there is significant pressure on us in terms of ensuring that we police every aspect of society. And human resource is an issue, but our officers continue to come to work. I am happy to say that at this time, we're seeing far less officers reporting sick. You would expect that you will see more, but far less are reporting sick. And it shows that the officers are really committed to ensuring that our country get out of the situation.
People known to the police being out attempting to commit any crime, you've not seen that?
No, we have not seen much of those. And we do have a few burglaries, 1 and 2, but not much during this time. You know, we can't caulk every hole, right? And so people will try to find whatever opening there is to go and try and commit crime. But in terms of criminal activities, it has been extremely minimal, and we want to ensure it is kept that way.
Police have detained Belize City resident Roderick Wade, who uses the alias Tape Boss. Not too long ago, the photographer was on social media claiming he had raped a female. That video went viral, and its content was met with widespread condemnation. Reports are that police have Wade in detention and that his house has been searched for any telltale information. While he later said he had posted the incriminating video in a joke, a minor has reported to police that she was raped. At this time, Wade has not been charged. A new budget for the 2020 fiscal calendar came into effect at the beginning of April, but with the fluid economic situation involving COVID-19, there are concerns as to whether government will be able to meet teachers' salaries in the months ahead. When asked for assurances to that end earlier today, Minister of Education Patrick Faber refrained from providing a response. Instead, he pointed to the overall hardships being faced by other countries that are also struggling financially with the pandemic. Faber said that his ministry will try its utmost to ensure that teachers are duly compensated, even with the existing constraints.
That is not a question that I want to take on. In fact, I can't take it on. As all know, the country is experiencing financial struggles, as all nations are in the world. And so this is not something that is caused by our government. It is something that is unfortunately with us without our saying so. I think all know that there are measures, in fact bodies, mechanisms set up to determine how we are going to proceed in relation to the salaries of public servants and teachers. And so I would want us to leave that question to those kinds of entities that have been set up for that particular reason. But as far as I know, as we speak, there is no definitive plan for that. And what will happen in the future, as I've said, we'll just have to wait and see. But from the Ministry of Education's viewpoint, we have to try our best, of course, and we will try our best to ensure that teachers continue to get as best remuneration as they possibly can, given our very, very constrained circumstances.
The fiscal allowance for education is the second largest area for recurrent expenditure for government after the Ministry of Finance. Given the dire state of the local economy amid the coronavirus crisis, it is expected that budgets for all government ministries will be cut. Education, however, remains a key priority, and according to Minister Faber, the only other ministry that will perhaps receive that kind of priority spending is health.
Insofar as I think the government is unable to avoid spending on education, the budget is intact, but when it comes down to everything that can be deemed, I don't want to call it a luxury, like you were asking just now about study leave. When we send a teacher on study leave, we have to pay a replacement, so that teacher can delay the studies while we're in the crunch. That would be something that can help. And insofar as the intention is there on the part of the wider government to provide the monies that we need for the expenditure side, the intention is there, but the monies aren't rolling in. We will have to face the new reality just like every other ministry. And so I am confident in saying that once I sit with my colleagues, that education, as it has always been the case with, will be given serious priority. I think that that has to mean that the only other ministry that will probably get priority, given the kind of situation that we're in, is of course the Ministry of Health.
Ending the school year with home-based learning is a historic first for the education sector, when traditionally the months of May and June are reserved for examinations. Whereas BJAT, PSE, and CXCs are held in those months, this year those papers are being waived. But what will teachers be doing during this extended period away from their classrooms? The Ministry of Education is recommending that they pursue continued professional development in order to gain necessary hours towards the renewal of their respective teaching license.
But there are many things that we still have on the table. Whether or not this is the way we are going to end the school year with this kind of home-based learning is still very much up in the air, but we have to be prepared, and we have to have some direction, some plan B, if you will, just in case things don't go the way we would want them to go. As it stands now, we are only officially out of school because of the state of emergency, which only takes us up to the end of April. And so if things improve, which many are doubtful it will, but there could be a completely different scenario in terms of how we end the school year should things turn around quickly. But all of that is really up in the air. There were issues that we discussed with the Belize National Teachers Union as it relates to renewing of full licensing, the licenses that had to do with the number of CPD hours. You all remember this in the media. So the months that are, or the time that is coming up, I think it is in August that we primarily do CPDs, but of course we're not limited to that. But since teachers are at home, many are not as engaged as they would normally have been if they were going into the classrooms. If they would like to engage in CPDs at this time, we are encouraging it.
After the break, police say residents must adhere to social distancing at food pantry programs.
Whether you're home or just home for the moment,
The Social Security Board, in collaboration
On Friday, police officers shut down pantry programs across Belize City. It has been reported that cops were telling pantry recipients to go home, and that didn't go over well with citizens who had been waiting in lines for hours to get their grocery items. The Minister of Human Development, Anthony Boots Martinez, was not happy about the closure of the pantry locations and said that the police had no authority and were breaking the law when they asked the pantry programs to shutter down. The pantries were reopened shortly after. Today, Commissioner of Police Chester Williams told the press that there are no issues between his department and the Ministry of Human Development, but that Minister Martinez was wrong. Here's how he explains it.
The police, we do understand the need for the pantry program, but indeed the minister was wrong to say that the police could not have closed down the pantry program because the legislation or the SI did not make provision for it, or if it do, it will come under Section 9, subsection D, subsection 6, which speaks to domestic delivery of goods, because the pantry program is a program set up where goods is being delivered to needed persons, and that by virtue of the regulation can operate from 8 to 7 p.m. The only thing is that it speaks to delivery, which means that those involved would have to deliver the pantry to the homes of people. But as I've said before, that we do understand that some of these organizations that are out there trying to help people who are in need do not have the means to deliver. And so we have to work with them, because we cannot police in a way that we exclude people who are in dire need of food items from receiving what they could receive to sustain themselves whilst being at home. And it is with that spirit that we have said to the minister and his ministry that we are going to work together to ensure that the pantries are issued. The only thing we ask for is that there be system put in place to ensure that social distance is maintained, because we're dealing with a pandemic. And so what we have been doing is that we post police officers at a different pantry location to assist the organizers in ensuring that social distance is maintained.
To make things easier for those food pantry recipients, the Ministry of Human Development has a new schedule that is organized by last name and is designed to reduce lines and comply with social distancing regulations. You can see the full schedule for all the pantry stores on our Facebook page. Note that this applies only to food pantry recipients who are required to present their pantry cards when collecting their groceries. Over 100 persons breached a curfew law over the weekend, but it did not include minors. On Friday evening, the new curfew regulations for persons 16 years and younger came into effect. That new law states that these persons must be in their homes by 4 p.m. every day and cannot be found in public alone or in the company of their parents. Well, the good news is that no minors broke the law since it came into effect. Today, Commissioner Chester Williams shared more about the arrests made over the weekend.
Over the weekend, we had a total of 138 persons who were arrested for various offenses related to the state of emergency regulations. We continue to see a number of persons out who should not be out, as well as persons who are out during the curfew hours. And again, I just want to appeal to the Belizean people that what is it that we are doing here is for all of our safety and benefit, and appeal to them again that if there is no need for you to be on the streets, please stay home. I think so far we're doing well, and I hope that we can continue the trend on which we are, where we have not seen any new cases for the past almost a week. If we can continue this, then hopefully pretty soon we'll be out of the situation. But again, it requires the full cooperation of everybody.
What are the reasons people are providing for being out during these times?
We see people out buying one soft drink, people out buying one Monster, people out buying Fanta. It's just amazing what you see. But people find every reason to be on the streets, and we cannot tolerate it. If it is that you're out to buy a soft drink or a Monster, that's not a reason we're going to send you back home. If you're going to buy Fanta, we'll arrest you because obviously that weed you're going to smoke, right? So we need to have good reasons to be out.
On Saturday morning, dozens of passengers destined for other parts of the country arrived by sea at the San Pedro Belize water taxi terminal. Many of them had been trapped on Ambergris Key at the time when the first confirmed case of COVID-19 was announced on March 23rd. The weekend arrival of 2 vessels saw the disembarkation of a throng of passengers who boarded buses that were headed to the northern and southern districts. The police department was on hand to oversee the arrival and subsequent departure of these individuals.
Well, our role was just simply to ensure that those who were supposed to leave the island left, and when they arrive in the city, to ensure that they do not wander off into the city, that they board their buses and they go to the respective areas that they were supposed to go. So I believe it was well coordinated.
On the previous occasion, they were left to themselves to, in essence, catch a bus?
Yes, but this time we coordinated and ensured they got on the bus and they went to whatever area they were supposed to go.
There was an unprecedented event today in the international markets that should have some bearing for Belize. The coronavirus pandemic caused oil demand to drop so rapidly that producers have no space to store the crude oil. With most of the world in lockdown and air and other travel on halt, use of oil is limited. Oil prices plunged below zero and U.S. crude for May delivery turned negative, which had never before occurred since NYMEX oil futures began trading in 1983. Reports say that U.S. crude for June delivery is still trading above $20 a barrel, which spells disaster in the industry. We reached out to the Financial Secretary Joe Wade for his comment on what this means for Belize. By news time, we did not get a response, but we do know that government is also hard-pressed for revenue so that any savings to the consumer may not be a sure thing. In other news of a financial nature, Belize's ratings on Standard & Poor's have taken a hit. The agency has lowered the credit ratings from a B- to a CCC, all due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, the tourism industry has come to a screeching halt with airline and cruise ship travel suspended. S&P also states that larger fiscal and external financing needs, lower international reserves, and increased pressure on its vulnerable healthcare system are likely to weigh on the government's ability and willingness to meet its debt service requirements this year. The negative rating signals that there will be increased risks to timely debt payment in respect of the U.S. $13 million due in August for the Superbond, and this scenario could lower even further if there is non-payment of commercial obligations or if Belize were to enter into negotiations to restructure its commercial debt. But the rating could be revised to stable in the next 6 to 12 months if Belize successfully bolsters its external liquidity by securing official or multilateral financing, allowing it to cover upcoming interest payments on its external bond. Last week, we reported on the impasse between the chairman of the Bullet Tree Village and livestock producers who export informally to Guatemala. The chairman, Sabino Pinello, said in a meeting of the COVID-19 task force on the Agricultural Committee that farmers cannot expect to traverse through the village if they did not pay a toll. As we have been reporting, the livestock industry has been taking a hit, and since the impasse 3 weeks ago, approximately $1.8 million have been lost, with that figure potentially increasing to $2.4 million monthly. Today, the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry wrote to the committee indicating that cattle farmers can either continue to feed the herd through a drought, even though a drought is forecasted, or dispose of the animals since there are far more than can be locally consumed. The BCCI also calls the position of Pinello to be in contravention of the Village Council Act, which does not give him authority to charge a fee at a time when the livelihood of 4,500 cattle farmers is at risk. The BCCI also points out that the charge has not been taken as required to the National Assembly, so the BCCI says Pinello is unauthorized and acting illegally. The private sector is appealing to the committee to act soonest to allow exports to continue until the matter can be formalized. For context, this is what Pinello had to say.
What kind of benefits are you looking at, Mr. Sabino, for us to consider?
Well, at least the benefits that the police officer are getting, because I'll be honest to you, several times, you know, I'm a businessman here in the community. I travel that checkpoint every minute, and I see all those cattle trucks, they just come and they just take money into the compound of the police officers. You understand? And not only me, several people have seen that.
Okay, so you are saying that they're giving money to the policeman, and you want the same benefit?
Well, the benefit is not for me; it's for the community, right?
Okay, how much? Fair enough. Let us get to the bottom of this. How much money is the village council asking for? Because we don't have much time, you know. The parcels are drying up, and we need to move on this.
Well, sir, I'll be honest to you. If you don't have time, well, I'm sorry, but
no. What I want to get is to the bottom of it.
Or whatsoever, do not agree to work along with the council.
We want to work along with the council, but we need to know what is it that you want exactly, right? So we can propose right away to the government, and they will tell us what to do. What is it that you are requesting exactly?
At least for every truck that passes, at least they pay a fee for coming through the community, sir.
Okay, what fee, sir? What fee are you looking at, more or less?
Well, right now I don't have a figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we can try and figure out with the council and see what will be the let's say like we decide, okay, let's ask them for every truck that passes. Let's say, for example, let's say, okay, if every truck will pass, let's say, okay, we let them pay at least $75 per truck. The community will benefit from it. That is an example, right? I'm not saying that is what we're going to charge, but I'm saying, let's say it's like a fee, right? For every truck that passes, at least pay a fee for the community.
Okay.
My major point,
okay.
Mr. Chairman.
There's much more news after the break, so stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service
So far, a total of 7,200 plus persons have applied since April 3rd to the unemployment program. 32,916 applications have been approved for payment, including over 7,000 today. Accordingly, 20,000 plus were paid by the end of the day by the Social Security Board. The program will also be using ATM debit cards from Heritage Bank for payments to qualifying persons. The economic czars still have a total of 28,159 applications to be reviewed. Commissioner of Police Chester Williams says that 7 News didn't break any laws with their Facebook post over the weekend. The media house posted that they received credible reports that a man from Corozal was at the KHMH showing symptoms consistent with COVID-19. The post went on to say that the patient was in respiratory distress and on a ventilator, and that frontline staff may have been exposed when he was admitted, among other pieces of information. Later, the Director of Health Services issued a release that the person didn't test positive and was hospitalized because of an accident. The original post was being widely shared online, and when the official statement was released, the public were asking why the news station wasn't called out by authorities for what the public perceived to be fake news, when 3 persons have already been charged for spreading fake news. Today, Commissioner Chester Williams told the media that in order to determine if the department can proceed with the prosecution, they had to determine if the post was false and if it created public alarm.
Now, is the post false? Let's dissect it. Patient at hospital. Yes, a patient was there. 2, did the patient had respiratory problem? Yes. Was the patient on ventilator? Yes. Was KHMH dealing with the patient as a COVID-19 case? Yes. Were there concerns that the hospital workers may have been exposed while the patient was admitted had he been positive for COVID-19? The answer is yes. I even saw photographs with the medical practitioners in their full regime while they were dealing with the patient. So in essence, the post by Channel 7 was premature, yes, but it was not false. And so based on that, there can be no prosecution. And I would ask that the media be more responsible in the sense that when you get information from within, because I know you all have your sources planted in every department, including police, but when you get your information from within, to please try to reach out to somebody for confirmation, or you await confirmation before you put it out in the public domain. Because sometimes you get things that is not true, and it come across as being irresponsible reporting.
In terms of something like the post we did, and the law that is currently on the books to, how do I say this? Prosecute people for information that could lead to public panic. How dangerous is that law in terms of the press? Because we often get information that is half true or could be wrongly represented, but it's our duty to move forward with these things that we...
I don't want it to seem as if we're trying to suppress the media. That would be the last thing I would want to do. I respect the work that you all as media people do. I only ask that you'll be a bit more responsible at times, especially in times like these. You know, the minute somebody hears about COVID-19, everybody starts to panic, right? And so when it comes to reporting, we have to be more responsible in it. And I saw some posts on Facebook where people are saying, oh, the media should be held to a higher standard. And I would want to agree with them because you're a professional journalist. So you should be held at a higher standard. But at the same time, too, you get information and you have a right to bring it to your audience. But while you do have that right, you also must ensure that what you're reporting to your audience is the truth.
Coming up after the break, fires everywhere. We'll tell you how they're affecting health and the environment.
With over 100
global perspective.
More than 100 fires were recorded on a single day in Belize last week, posing serious risks to human health and the wider environment. Air quality measurement tools showed that the air recorded in Belmopan on Friday morning wasn't suitable for breathing. The western parts of the country have recorded heavy smoke, and that has lingered for hours. But this fire problem extends throughout the country, with high number of illegal fires recorded in the west, north, central, and even parts of the south. Tonight we can tell you that while laws are being drafted to make these fires illegal during this state of emergency, close to 200 fires were burning in the country today alone. That was preceded by a high number recorded between Friday and Saturday. Here's that story.
186 fires were burning today across Belize. As this map indicates, the highest number of fires were recorded in the Cayo district. Just a few days ago, between Friday and Saturday, 204 fire points were recorded in the country. These fires were spread across Belize, with the biggest numbers recorded in Orange Walk and the Cayo districts. These fires are mostly from agricultural activities.
Agricultural fires. People set their farm ablaze. This is the dry season. People are preparing for the next planting season, and that's just traditionally done by burning. That is, we see that every year with every dry season. But this year is probably a little worse than other times because we had a very dry year behind us, and also the drought is still continuing. It's even drier than it normally should be. So a lot of the vegetation that surrounds those farms is drier than you would expect. So those fires escape and they go into the bush and they continue burning.
When these fires go uncontrolled, they can burn for days or even weeks. A wildfire can burn down an entire forest and kill any living thing in its path, which can be devastating not just for wildlife, but also for communities. These fires also affect visibility, air quality, and health. And most of these wildfires are started by people. And high temperatures, dry leaves, and wind only help to fan the flames.
Practices are not being done with preventative measures. So we have probably fires escaping and getting into forested areas, basically getting to be wildfires, and that's the reason we're seeing a lot of fires in Belize are actually unprecedented. It's just a lot of heat. The conditions are optimum for fires to actually ignite and spread. And I think that really is the cause of most of the fires going on. It's really it's concerning. We are in a drought. And all the vegetations are really dry and ready to burn. We can easily experience what was observed in Australia and Brazil last year. Our vegetation, or the vegetation, and really is really dry right now, and it can make for a very dangerous situation.
But this growing number of fires is not unique to Belize. With a surge in fires reported in neighboring countries, air currents also blow some of that pollution our way. Because the threat of these fires is real and serious, the Wildlife Conservation Society has been working with several of these countries to address this growing issue. It's being done through a project called the Mesoamerican 5 Great Forests Initiative.
What we have seen throughout the region really is an increase of forest fires, and they have determined that to be due mainly due to agricultural fires, which of course includes cattle ranching. So one of the main drivers for deforestation in the area and forest fires is agriculture. So people are intentionally setting fires so that they can clear land, so that they can drive wildlife out of the forest to hunt them, and then of course so that they can plant and ranch cattle. So we've seen this across the region, and of course now we're seeing it in Belize. We work with different organizations, also government and communities, and the goal of that really is to protect and manage the forests in this region, and the aim of it is to protect 10 million hectares of forest, also to recover 500,000 hectares of forest that have been either illegally claimed or destroyed, and of course to stamp out illegal cattle ranching, because this is definitely a huge threat to the forest, and of course a big driver of forest fires.
The Forest Department calls on the public to refrain from lighting fires during this time, because these fires cause a number of airborne particles to accumulate outside temporarily. This would also pose even more health risks for COVID-19 patients.
There are fire laws that needs to be adhered to, and right now, as it is with this COVID-19 pandemic, the patients that are actually positive with this virus, I'm sure they may be experiencing complications with all this smoke, the poor air quality that we're actually having at this time. Also, I just hope that the people can understand and be or show that consideration to fellow citizens.
This week, a new piece of legislation will be passed that will make lighting of fires illegal during a state of emergency. Once it's passed, this law will be used to prosecute those persons who do not adhere. Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
And an update on the Lord Ashcroft Relief Fund. The most recent donation is for $500,000, which was made to the Belize Red Cross. So far, we can report that the fund has dispersed $3.75 million, which includes over $2 million used to obtain medical equipment to combat COVID-19. The Hope Haven Center on Ambergris-Key received $100,000 from the relief fund. The money is being invested in people, helping them to get through this very difficult time when many have lost their jobs. Hope Haven has released an uplifting video showing how volunteers are assisting with food distribution efforts.
Thank you for the help.
No, I just need your one for now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For su asistencia. Thank you for all the help.
All your help. Try to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Ashcroft.
Greetings from La Isla Bonita. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff of Hope Haven and the families that we're serving through the Lord Ashcroft COVID-19 Fund, we would like to express our most sincere gratitude to you. It is through your donation that we have been able to help hundreds of families in San Pedro. May you be blessed tenfold for all you have done and continue to do in our community. Thank you, Lord Ashcroft.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us, and from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, stay home, and stay safe. Good night.